plan to take down ISIS is working despite recent terror attacks.
As Doug McElway reports, the State Department says cooperation from more countries would help.
The terror attacks in Orlando and Turkey, refocusing lawmakers on the fight against ISIS. The Obama administration and Pentagon officials all reporting steady progress on the ground in Iraq and Syria. But there's still no timetable for taking back Mosul, the last big city in Iraq under ISIS control. The Pentagon says the focus now is avoiding a humanitarian disaster in recently liberated Fallujah.
The city is in better shape than Ramadi was after that liberation last year. If the initial reports end up accurate, we hope this will bode well for getting the residents of Fallujah back into their homes as quickly as possible.
Meanwhile, critics still calling for the president to take a harder line on fighting the terror group, claiming the response so far hasn't been effective, and the ISIS threat to America is greater than ever.
ISIS has a safe haven. They want attacks in the United States. So I think the president has had no strategy over the last 2 years.
The administration says they're building a stronger coalition to defeat ISIS in a ground war. Diplomats brushing off suggestions that the U.S. should go in alone, noting the president has already ruled out any large-scale American ground force, and that the fighting, so far, has been done by our coalition partners.
Every day, our allies and partners serve as the front line of our defense, enabling us to stay ahead of our enemies and project our presence.
The president's envoy to the anti-ISIS coalition says that the terror group should be defeated in Iraq and Syria within 14 months. At the Pentagon, Doug McElway, Fox News.
CIA Director John Brennan says the attack on Istanbul's Ataturk airport has the earmarks of the Islamic State. Brennan also cautioned the extremist group is more than likely to strike here on American soil. With us now, KFI talk show host and combat veteran Bryan Suits. Thank you. What do you make of Brennan's announcement today?
Well, ISIS traditionally does not take this sort of immediate credit. They do usually let things stew, and we found that a lot of times it's because they're busy editing. They're editing the B-roll. They actually release things in those really slick, two-shot HD videos. And for them, this was a successful operation. Whether it's the Turks have put a cap on the news, either there's 39 dead or maybe there's 60 dead. But for them, it was a success. And it's for the Turks, it's really bad news because they have had a very complex relationship with ISIS. The president of Turkey, Erdogan, his son is one of the major middlemen for selling ISIS oil. He has a shipping company that the trucks come from Syria, the trucks go to the Mediterranean coast, the oil goes on his ships, and it goes to Ukraine. He and his dad have become very rich middlemaning this ISIS oil, and he's had a hands-off sort of policy. Also, Turkish intelligence is being photographed, sending weapons to ISIS and all that. It appears that maybe the deal's off.
Where is the global community if they know that information?
Very silent, because Turkey is that key of a NATO ally. We can't embarrass them internationally. This stuff is a badly kept secret, and NATO's not making a thing about it because right now Turkey is a very, very important guy. They're geographically
Well, you got people
key there.
pouring over the border from Syria.
Yeah, and they can turn it on or turn it off. And they've made a deal with the EU. We'll keep the refugees here, but you have to allow Turkish citizens to travel throughout the EU as if we were in the EU, because they've been stiff-armed, for 40 years. For ISIS to basically declare war on Turkey is probably bad for ISIS. And for once, I agree with John Kerry that this is yet another indication that ISIS, which was a ground army, a land army holding territory, is now reverting back to an opportunistic, urban terror group. This is not a real hard thing to do, what they did yesterday. They just observed Ataturk Airport enough to see that cabs didn't get searched. So they stole a cab.
Is that what was confirmed, that they stole a cab? Because the question was, who drove them to the airport? I mean, they had those weapons. If you see in that video, their guns aren't something you just stick in your pocket.
Suicide vests. And I mean, I've been with a lot of indifferent cabbies pre-Uber days, but I can't imagine a cabbie, even in Istanbul, saying, "Oh, what are those AKs back there? Mm-hmm. Those are no." If he wasn't an accomplice, then he was perhaps the most naive cabbie, I think, in all of Istanbul.
So speaking of opportunistic, we can't help but think, what are their intentions here in the United States? Obviously, we haven't had an incident like that, and here you have an airport there that was fortified, or probably had
One
more
of the more
security
secure.
than more secure airports in the world.
And a spectacular attack on a tourist hub like this is obviously a goal here in the U.S., or just random terror. What we do at LAX is pretty good, but it changes day by day. The one thing they do is they don't do the same thing every day. Some days you pull up Century, and the checkpoint is only at departures. You can get to arrivals. And if I had a car bomb at LAX, I would want to light it off in arrivals because you would attenuate the explosion. I would always have a checkpoint at arrivals at the lower level. Some days, like last week, they were out half a mile from the entrance to LAX. And so if you're, the number one thing terrorists do to plan is to observe. And so if you're observing LAX, LA airport police are doing one thing right, and that is they're switching around what they do. These guys in Istanbul, they saw that cabs were never searched. So
once you get there,
you can take a knife cutter on an airplane on September 11th, 2001. The water finds its own level. They went to the path of least resistance. I bet they're searching cabs tonight in Istanbul.
When travelers are nervous now, obviously for good reason, but when you hear the only advice coming in is see something, say something. These three guys had vests on, they had huge weapons. You know, they were dressed for winter, which is odd. It's 90 degrees in Istanbul this time of year. People don't notice that kind of stuff when you're at an airport. It's a crazy scene. You're focused on getting your own stuff done.
Yeah, and their plan was to initiate the attack at the first moment that they were at whatever layer they were at. Had they been stopped at the outer checkpoints, they would have gotten out and started shooting. They were pre-security, just like LAX, pre-metal detector, all that. They're out there in the ticketing area. That's uncontrolled, so they go out and they start, killing with the AKs. And then when they were engaged by police, and there's one really graphic piece of video where a Turkish cop engages one of the terrorists with a handgun, puts him down, the guy loses his AK, and then he fumbles with his vest, and the cop is the choice of his life. It's shoot him in the head or run. Well, the cop ran. He was badly injured. He lost his spleen. He should have shot him in the head. And so this is something where, and I learned through several suicide bombs in Baghdad, if the guy identifies himself by action or not responding to orders, you have to act immediately without hesitation, because it's losing 5 people is better than losing 55 people. And it becomes triage, and I hope LAPD is talking to people on the force who were in Baghdad between 2003 and 2009, because we're the people that went through these, and we learned the hard lessons that you can't hesitate. You have to, there's things that you can do to just simply mitigate the damage. Like I say, 3 dead is better than 53 dead, and that's the choice that some cop at LAX might be faced with.
It's important they get that training. Hopefully they're either getting it or they're going to get it. All right, Bryan Suits, thank you so much. What do you got?
Glasses back.
Yeah.
Reading your tweets and your